The Everglades is the only place in the world where alligators and crocodiles live together. But the locals will tell you, those aren't what you should be afraid of. There's something else in that swamp, something that watches from the water, something that waits in the fog. And it only comes for people who are alone. Tonight, I'm sharing 5 true stories from hikers, kayakers, and rangers who went into the Everglades and barely made it out. These aren't alligator attacks. These aren't accidents. These are encounters people still can't explain. Something that's been in that swamp long before humans ever found it. The Everglades covers 1.5 million acres. Most of it has never been explored, never been mapped. And the people who know it best, the rangers, the guides, the ones who've spent their lives in that water, they all say the same thing. Never go alone. Because if you do, something will find you, and it might not let you leave. His footprint stopped in the middle of the trail. No struggle, no blood, no sign of an animal attack. He just stopped existing. This story was shared by a park ranger named Miguel. 20 years working in the Everglades, he'd seen everything. Gator attacks, snake bites, people who got lost and couldn't find their way out. But this case was different. March 2019. A solo hiker named Kevin entered the park around 7 a.m., signed in at the ranger station, said he was doing a day hike, 8 miles round trip. He never signed out. Search and rescue was called the next morning. Miguel led the team. They found Kevin's trail easily. Boot prints in the mud, heading south. Normal pace. For 3 miles, everything looked fine. Then the track stopped. Not at water, not at a cliff, not at any natural boundary. In the middle of the boardwalk, dry wood, clear visibility, 1 boot print, complete, mid-stride, and then nothing. Miguel checked the surrounding area. The mud on both sides of the boardwalk was undisturbed. No prints leading away, no sign of a struggle. Kevin had been walking, and then he wasn't. They searched for a week. Helicopters, dogs, divers checking every waterway within 5 miles. Nothing. Not a backpack, not a shoe, not a single piece of clothing. Whatever happened to Kevin, it didn't leave evidence. But Miguel noticed something else that day. The wildlife was wrong. Usually the Everglades is loud, birds, insects, gators bellowing, life everywhere. But at that spot, where the tracks ended, everything was silent. No birds overhead, no insects buzzing, no fish in the water. Like everything living had fled that area. Miguel marked the spot on his map. A small X. He had dozens of them now. Different years, different hikers, same pattern. Tracks that end in the middle of nowhere. Victims who vanish without a trace. Areas where nothing living wants to be. I've been in this swamp my whole life, Miguel told me. I know what alligators do to people. I know what the water does. I know what the heat does. He paused. This wasn't any of that. Something took him fast, clean. No evidence. Kevin's case is still open, listed as missing, presumed drowned. But Miguel knows the truth. The water didn't take him. Something else did. I thought it was an alligator. Then it climbed the tree. This story comes from a wildlife photographer named Rachel. She'd spent years documenting the Everglades, knew every species, every behavior, until she saw something that wasn't in any textbook. November 2020. Rachel was deep in the backcountry, a 3-day solo trip to photograph wading birds at dawn. On the second night, she camped on a hammock, a small island of dry land in the middle of the swamp. Around 2 a.m. she woke up. Something was moving in the water, close to her campsite. Rachel grabbed her flashlight, pointed it toward the sound. 2 eyes reflected back, low in the water, about 30 feet away. Gator, she thought. Nothing unusual. They were everywhere. But she kept watching. Something felt off. The eyes were too high, too far apart, and they weren't moving like a gator. Gators drift, slow, lazy. This thing was still, perfectly still, just watching her. Rachel reached for her camera. Habit. The moment she moved, the thing moved too. It rose out of the water, and it kept rising. Gators are maybe 2 feet tall when they stand up. This thing was taller than any gator. Standing upright, water dripping off something that looked like scales, but wrong. Too smooth, too dark. Rachel couldn't see a face, just a shape, a silhouette against the dark water. And those eyes, still watching her. Then it moved toward the nearest tree, a cypress, old, massive, and it climbed, fast, wrong, limbs moving in ways she couldn't process. In seconds, it was in the canopy, gone. Rachel didn't sleep that night, sat with her back against a tree, flashlight on, knife in hand. At dawn she checked the cypress. There were marks on the bark, deep gouges, like claws, but they weren't claw marks, not exactly. They were too uniform, too deliberate, like something had gripped the tree, with hands. Rachel cut her trip short, paddled out that morning, didn't tell anyone what she'd seen, but she stopped doing solo trips after that. Only goes with groups now, never stays overnight. I've been photographing wildlife for 15 years, she told me. I know what lives in that swamp. I know every species, every behavior. She paused. That thing, it wasn't an alligator. It wasn't anything that's supposed to exist. And it was hunting. I could feel it. I was just lucky I wasn't what it wanted. The light was beautiful. That's what made it so dangerous. This story was shared by a fishing guide named Carlos, born in the Everglades. His family had lived there for 4 generations. He knew the swamp better than anyone, including what to avoid. My grandfather told me about the lights, Carlos said. He called them los engañadores, the deceivers. He said they weren't natural. They were something old, something that lived in the deep swamp before anyone came here. And they were hungry. December 2018. Carlos was guiding 2 clients on a night fishing trip. They were in a remote area, miles from any other people. Around midnight, one of the clients spotted it, a light, pale blue, hovering over the water about 100 yards away. "What's that?" the client asked. Carlos felt his blood go cold. "We need to leave, now." But the client was already moving, standing up in the boat, reaching for his phone to take a picture. "Sit down," Carlos said. "Don't look at it." The client laughed. "It's just swamp gas. I want a photo." The light began moving, slowly, toward them. Carlos started the engine, but the client was leaning over the side of the boat now, reaching toward the water. "It's so beautiful," he whispered. "Can you hear it?" Carlos grabbed him, pulled him back. "Hear what?" The client's eyes were glassy, unfocused. "The singing. Can't you hear the singing?" Carlos looked at the light. It was closer now, maybe 50 yards, and beneath it, something was moving in the water, something big, following the light. Carlos gunned the engine, didn't look back, drove for 30 minutes without stopping. When they finally reached the marina, the client seemed to snap out of it, didn't remember reaching for the water, didn't remember the singing. "What happened?" he kept asking. "Why did we leave?" Carlos didn't tell him the truth, just said the fishing wasn't good. But he knew what he'd seen. The light wasn't swamp gas. It was a lure, like an anglerfish. Beautiful on top, something terrible underneath. His grandfather had told him stories, people who followed the lights, boats found empty the next morning, bodies that washed up weeks later with expressions of peace on their faces, like they'd walked willingly into whatever was waiting. The lights hunt, Carlos told me. They find people who are alone, people who are vulnerable, and they lead them into the deep water. Whatever's down there, it's been feeding for a long, long time. Carlos still guides fishing trips, but never at night anymore. And when clients ask about the swamp lights, he tells them they're just swamp gas. It's easier than telling them the truth. The kayak drifted back to the launch point, empty. No paddle, no gear, just scratches on the hull, from the inside. This story comes from a park ranger named Diana. She worked at one of the Everglades water trail stations, checking permits, logging kayakers in and out. September 2021, a woman named Sarah signed out for a 3-day solo paddle, experienced kayaker, proper equipment. She'd done this route before. Day 1 check-in, normal, sent a GPS ping from her campsite. Day 2 check-in, nothing. Day 3, her kayak washed up at the launch point, alone. Diana was part of the search team. They found Sarah's campsite on day 2 of the search, tent still standing, food hung properly, everything in order. Except for one thing. Sarah's life jacket was still there, hanging on a tree branch, but Sarah never took off her life jacket. Ever. Diana had seen her permit photo. She was wearing it clipped on, even for the picture. No one takes off their life jacket in gator territory. The kayak itself was the strangest part. Diana examined it at the launch point. The hull had scratches on it, long, deep, like fingernails, but they were on the inside, like someone had been trying to claw their way out. The search continued for 2 weeks. Dogs, helicopters, dive teams. Nothing. Sarah was never found, but Diana noticed something when she reviewed Sarah's GPS data. On day 2, Sarah's tracker showed her moving, but not on any marked trail. She was heading into an area called the Dead Zone by the rangers, a section of deep swamp with no trails, no campsites, no reason for anyone to go there, and her GPS showed her moving fast, much faster than paddling speed, like something was carrying her. The signal stopped at 3:17 a.m. in the middle of the Dead Zone and never moved again. Diana requested a search of that area. Her supervisors denied it. "We don't send people into the Dead Zone," they told her. "Not since 1987. Diana asked what happened in 1987. They didn't answer. Sarah's case was closed as missing, presumed drowned, accidental death. But Diana keeps a copy of that GPS data, the track leading into nowhere, the impossible speed, the stop at 3:17 a.m. Sarah didn't drown, Diana told me. She wasn't attacked by a gator. Something took her, something that lives in the part of the swamp we're not allowed to search. And it's still out there, waiting for the next person who paddles too far alone. I've worked in the Everglades for 23 years. I know what's in that swamp, and I'm going to tell you. This is the final story tonight. It comes from a senior ranger who asked to remain anonymous. I'll call him James. James has seen more of the Everglades than almost anyone alive. The deep areas, the places tourists never go, the sections that are closed for environmental protection, but he knows the real reason they're closed. There's something in the water, James told me. Something old. We don't know what it is. We don't know where it came from, but it's been there longer than we have. He described it the best he could. It's not one thing. It's many. Or maybe it's one thing that can be in many places at once. It watches. That's its primary behavior. It watches from the water, from the trees, from the fog, and it waits. It doesn't take everyone, James said. It's selective. We've tried to find a pattern. Age doesn't matter, gender doesn't matter, fitness doesn't matter. The only common factor, they were all alone when it happened. James believes the Everglades itself is the creature's territory, all 1.5 million acres, and it knows every inch. It can sense when someone enters alone. I don't know how, but it knows. And it follows them, sometimes for hours, sometimes for days, watching, deciding. He told me about an experience from his early years. He was doing a solo patrol in a remote section, deep swamp, no trails. Around midday, he stopped to rest, sat on a fallen log, ate his lunch. That's when he felt it, something watching him. He looked around, nothing visible, just water and trees. But the feeling wouldn't go away. That prickle on the back of his neck, that instinct that something was wrong. He looked at the water, perfectly still, no movement. Then he saw it. Eyes, just below the surface, about 20 feet away. Not gator eyes. These were too big, too far apart, and they were looking directly at him. James didn't move, didn't breathe. The eyes watched him for what felt like hours, probably minutes. Then slowly they sank, disappeared beneath the dark water. James waited another hour before he moved. Then he left. Didn't run. You never run in the swamp. But he moved faster than he'd ever moved before. He made it back to his station, reported what he'd seen. His supervisor just nodded. "You're lucky," the supervisor said. "It decided you weren't the right one." James asked what would have happened if he had been the right one. His supervisor didn't answer, just handed him a folder. Inside were reports, decades of them, disappearances, strange sightings, rangers who'd seen things they couldn't explain, and photos, scratches on trees, marks in the mud, things pulled from the water that didn't match any known species. "We don't talk about this publicly," the supervisor said. "Can't prove it exists, can't explain it, so we just manage it. Keep people in groups, close certain areas, hope it stays fed on the wildlife." James has spent 23 years in that swamp since then. He's seen the eyes twice more, always watching, always deciding. He's one of the lucky ones. "My advice," James said at the end of our conversation, "never go into the Everglades alone, not for any reason. Because something is in that water, something ancient, something hungry, and it's always watching, waiting for the right one."